Hi, friends. So we're here again with American Miscellany, and we're reading essay number 104, which I'm pretty excited about. It's about marriage. So this book is called American Miscellany. It is random. It was published in 1865, and the subject matter is interesting. I sure hope this marriage one isn't too... we'll see. We'll see. I'm sure it'll be entertaining, if nothing else. We previously read essay number 103 on the self-tormentors, which was very interesting. But now we're logically moving on to the next thing, marriage, right? Why not? Self-tormentors and then marriage. So, okay, we're moving on. We're on page 255, by the way, of American Miscellany. And our subject is marriage. Marriage. In nations most primitive and savage, marriage is the unceremonious appropriation of one or more females by the right of the strongest. We may suppose that the same was the case before the dawning of civilization. But very early in the history of our race, we find contracts made with certain impressive solemnities. Covenants were made memorable by an exchange of presents, still a custom among barbarous tribes, and that know all men by these presents, preserved in forms of law, may bear such a meaning. Abraham made presents of sheep and oxen. The Phoenicians set up a pillar or raised a heap of stones. The Scythians poured wine into a vessel, mixed with it the blood of the contracting parties, and dipped into it a scimitar, arrows, a javelin, and with imprecations on whomsoever should break the agreement, the parties and their witnesses drank. The ancient Arabians cut their hands and sprinkled the blood upon 7 stones, invoking the gods. The ancient Medes and Lycians sucked the blood from each other's arms. The Nasamones drunk with each other. The Greeks and Romans shook hands and swore by the gods and the tombs of their ancestors. But the most common pledge of good faith is eating together. This is considered all over the world as a pledge of amity. A feast is, therefore, one of the earliest and most general modes of solemnizing a marriage contract. And for ages, in many countries, it was the only one known. Marriage, as a religious ordinance or sacrament, has been recognized by but a small portion of the human race. It was such among the Greeks and Romans, who connected religion with all the sections of their lives, with all the actions of their lives. The Greeks and Romans who connected religion with all the actions of their lives and invoked the gods in their most simple and familiar labors and pastimes. All nations of whom we have any historical account ascribe the regulation of marriage to their first lawgivers. Thus, Menes, the first king of Egypt, is said to have first introduced matrimony and fixed the law concerning it. The Greeks attribute the same institutions to Cecrops, the Chinese to Fo He, the Peruvians to Manco Capac, and the Jews to God himself. Mythology would seem to teach monogamy, though polygamy was occasionally the practice. Thus, Jupiter had only his Juno, Pluto his Proserpine, Osiris his Isis, and the stolen amours of the gods, with the jealousies of their wives, point very significantly to the idea of confining the relation to a single couple, in theory, whatever irregularities of practice were tolerated. But if we look back to the patriarchal ages in the Oriental countries, where the highest type of humanity is held to have its origin, we find polygamy to have existed time out of mind, and even in the lifetime of Adam, in the antediluvian period. In the early stages, a wife was of great consequence and value. Her labor was of great use, for from her skill and handicraft men derived shelter, clothing, and many of the comforts of their simple life. When men were long-lived, it was a great object to have many children, and to take care of their flocks and herds, and for a defense against aggression. To be well served, therefore, and to ensure numerous progeny, men took a number of wives, and each wife strengthened the patriarch by securing the friendship of the family from which she was taken. But as in the order of providence, men and women were born in nearly equal proportions, the demand for women caused a price to be set upon them, and the husband was obliged to purchase his wife by paying a liberal sum. And this is still the case in China, where customs are petrified, and generally over Asia. When the price agreed upon was paid, the marriage was celebrated with a feast. Laban gathered his friends and bade a marriage feast when he pretended to give Rachel to Jacob for 7 years' labor, and then defrauded him by placing Leah in the nuptial bed instead of her more beautiful sister, whom he married 7 years afterward. Samson, when he married Delilah, gave a feast which lasted 7 days. The Babylonians carried the splendor of their marriage feasts to such an extravagant and ruinous extent that they had to be restrained by law. Among the Scandinavians, the celebration of a marriage was a scene of revelry and drunkenness, frequently productive of the most deplorable effects. Such was the custom among the Jews in the early time of Christ, and to this day. And in nearly all countries, marriage is celebrated with feasting and festivity. The following Jewish form of marriage contract is probably the oldest in the world. On such a day, month, and year, the son of B, on such a day, month, and year, A, the son of B, has said to D, the daughter of E, "Be thou my spouse, according to a law of Moses and of the Israelites, and I will give thee as a dowry for thy virginity the sum of 200 suzerain, as it is ordered by our law." And the said D hath consented to be his spouse upon the conditions aforesaid, which the said A doth bind himself and all that he hath to the very cloak upon his back, engaging himself to love, honor, feed, clothe, and protect her, and to perform all that is generally implied towards Israelitish wives. This was the written form of betrothal, and in all respects a civil contract. A simpler form was by a verbal agreement and the passing of a piece of money before witnesses. The ancient Assyrians, in the front rank of Eastern civilization, at a very early period established laws of marriage which were of a singular character. Once a year they assembled at a great fair all the marriageable girls of a province, when the public crier put them up for sale at public auction. First were put up the most beautiful, for whom the rich strove against each other, until the competition carried up the price to the highest point. When one beautiful woman had thus been disposed of, one less favored by nature was put up, and here the auction was reversed. The question was not how much will any one give, but how little will any one take. And he who bid her off at the lowest dowry took her for his wife, so that the price paid for the beautiful went to give dowries to the ugly. And thus husbands were provided for all. We often find nature making such a provision, since beauty and fortune are seldom united. The great attention paid by the Assyrians to matrimony is further shown by their having constituted a special court or tribunal whose only office was to see that young women were properly married and that the laws of this relation were observed. The custom of purchasing wives, for which we have given some reasons, appears to have generally prevailed as soon as the rights of property began to be respected, and bargained and exchanged commodities instead of taking them by force. From the moment property was recognized, everything was considered a property, even to a man's wives and children. Men bought their wives, sold their daughters, and it is supposed, in many cases, sold their children to service, since slaves were among the first articles of property and commerce known among mankind. And the sale of Joseph by his brethren was no extraordinary circumstance at that period. The idea of property in wives and children has never been lost, and is more fully recognized by our common law, which gives an action of damages for adultery and seduction. A man who runs away with another's wife is mulcted. It looks like M-U-L-C-T-E-D. Mulcted. Oh no, that can't be right. A man who runs away with another's wife is something in so much money, and the same for the seduction of a daughter, though the legislatures of some of our states have recently added other penalties. Let's try that again. A man who runs away with another's wife is mulcted in so much money, and the same for the seduction of a daughter, though the legislatures of some of our states have recently added other penalties. The regulation of the sale of wives by the Assyrians, which was an improvement upon their sale by parents, since it provided husbands for those who would not otherwise have been sought for, and was not the only example in antiquity of marriage being conducted by the state. The Thracians put up their fairest virgins to public sale for the benefit of the government, and the magistrates of Crete exercised the sole power of choosing partners for their young men. And in the exercise of this power, interest and affection were overlooked, the good of the state being the only object of attention.